The advertisement in the Cheyenne newspaper was simple. Rancher needs help with harvest, fair wages, room and board included. Delilah Lawrence read it 3 times before folding the paper and tucking it into her worn carpetbag, her hands trembling slightly as she made a decision that would change everything. It was late August of 1879, and the Colorado summer had turned the grasslands around Black Hawk into waves of gold beneath an endless sky. Delilah had arrived on the morning stage, dust coating her dark traveling dress, her auburn hair pinned beneath a modest bonnet. She was 22 years old, alone in the world and desperate enough to answer an advertisement clearly meant for men. Her father had died 6 months prior, leaving debts that consumed everything. Her mother had passed when Delilah was just a girl. There were no brothers, no husband, no options left in Kansas City except a marriage proposal from a man 3 times her age who looked at her like property he intended to acquire. So she ran. The walk from town to the ranch took nearly 2 hours. Her boots, made for city streets, pinched her feet mercilessly. The carpetbag grew heavier with each step, but when she crested the final hill and saw the spread below, something in her chest tightened. The ranch house was modest but well-maintained, constructed of weathered timber with a stone chimney. Corrals spread out to the east, holding perhaps a dozen horses. To the west, fields of wheat stretched toward the mountains, ready for harvest. A man emerged from the barn as she approached, straightening from his work. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dusty work clothes and a hat that shadowed his face. When he pushed the brim up, Delilah saw a strong jaw covered in a few days of stubble, dark brown eyes that held equal parts surprise and suspicion, and sun-weathered skin that spoke of years outdoors. "Help you, miss." His voice was deep, cautious. Delilah lifted her chin, forcing confidence she didn't feel. "I'm here about the advertisement, for the harvest work." His eyebrows rose. For a long moment he simply stared at her, and she could see him processing the situation. Then something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. "That advertisement was for farmhands." "I can work," Delilah said firmly. "I'm strong, I learn quickly, and I need the job." "This isn't city work, madam." Harvest means 12-hour days in the sun, hauling grain, binding sheaves. It'll tear up your hands and break your back if you're not used to it. "Then I'll get used to it." She met his gaze steadily. "Are you turning me away because I can't do the work or because I'm a woman?" That almost made him smile. She saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Name's Daniel Ortega," he said finally. "This is my ranch. Been working it solo since my brother headed to California last spring. Delilah Lawrence." He studied her for another long moment, and she could practically see him weighing the decision. Finally, he sighed, removing his hat to run a hand through dark hair. "You really want to do this?" "I really need to do this," she corrected. "All right, Miss Lawrence." "Room and board plus wages at the end of harvest. You work dawn to dusk, same as me. You quit halfway through, you get nothing." "Deal," Delilah extended her hand. "Deal." His palm was calloused and warm when he shook her hand, his grip firm but careful. Up close, she realized he was perhaps 27 or 28, with fine lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. Handsome, though he seemed unaware of it, Daniel showed her to a small room off the main house. It had clearly been used for storage recently, but he'd made an effort to clear it out. There was a narrow bed with clean linens, a washstand with a chipped basin, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "Breakfast is at dawn," he said from the doorway. "We start work right after. I'll go easy on you the first few days, let you build up to it." Delilah turned from unpacking her meager belongings. "Don't go easy on me, I said I could work." That almost smile returned. "We'll see." The first day nearly killed her. Daniel woke her before sunrise by knocking on her door. She dressed quickly in her oldest dress, already regretting that she didn't own anything more practical. Breakfast was simple: coffee, bacon, eggs, and bread. Daniel cooked it efficiently, moving around the kitchen with the ease of someone long accustomed to doing for himself. "You cook?" he asked as they ate. "Yes." "Then maybe we can trade off. I'm tired of my own cooking." The wheat fields were vast up close, the stalks heavy with grain and standing nearly as tall as Delilah's shoulder. Daniel showed her how to cut the wheat with a scythe, how to gather it into sheaves, how to bind them. The scythe was heavier than it looked. Within an hour her arms ached. By midday her hands were covered in blisters. By afternoon she could barely grip the handle. Daniel noticed, of course. "Take a break," he said, not unkindly. "I'm fine. You're bleeding through your gloves." Delilah looked down. He was right. She hadn't even felt it. "I'll wrap them tighter." "Stubborn," he muttered, but he brought her strips of cloth and showed her how to bind her hands properly. His touch was gentle, his movements practiced. "My mother used to say stubbornness was a virtue only if it didn't kill you first." "Is she nearby?" Delilah asked, welcoming the brief rest even though she'd never admit it. "She passed 10 years back. My father the year after. It was supposed to be me, my brother Miguel, and my sister Rosa working this place together. But Rosa married a shopkeeper in Denver and Miguel got gold fever. He tied off the last bandage. So it's just me. I'm sorry about your parents." He shrugged, but she could see the old grief in his eyes. "Long time ago. Come on, let's get back to it. And Delilah, you can admit when something hurts. That's not the same as quitting." She nodded, appreciating that he'd used her first name, that he didn't condescend. They worked until the sun began its descent, turning the sky shades of orange and pink that seemed impossible. Delilah's entire body screamed in protest with every movement. She could barely lift her arms. Dinner was beans and cornbread that she managed to prepare while Daniel tended the horses. They ate in tired silence, the good silence of people too exhausted for small talk. Delilah excused herself immediately after, stumbled to her room and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. When she woke the next morning to Daniel's knock, every muscle had stiffened. Getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. But she dressed, wrapped her blistered hands, and met him in the kitchen. Daniel took one look at her careful movements and said, "There's liniment in the cabinet. It'll help with the soreness." "Thank you. Still think you can handle this?" Delilah met his eyes. "I'm here, aren't I?" This time he actually smiled. It transformed his whole face, softening the hard edges, bringing warmth to his eyes. "You are at that." The days developed a rhythm. Wake before dawn, breakfast. Work until midday, brief rest during the worst heat. Work until dusk, dinner, sleep. Delilah's body slowly adapted. The blisters hardened into calluses. Her muscles grew accustomed to the strain. She learned to swing the scythe efficiently, to move through the wheat in steady rows, to bind the sheaves quickly. Daniel proved to be a patient teacher and a fair employer. He worked alongside her, never asking her to do anything he wouldn't do himself. When she struggled with a particularly heavy load, he'd help without making a show of it. When she managed something difficult, he'd nod approval. They didn't talk much during work, but the silences felt comfortable. Evenings were different. After dinner, as the heat broke and the world turned soft, they'd sometimes sit on the porch. Daniel would smoke his pipe while Delilah mended clothes or snapped beans for the next day. Conversation came easier then. "Why'd you really come here?" he asked one night, about 2 weeks into the harvest. Delilah's hand stilled on the shirt she was mending, one of his with a torn sleeve. "I told you, I needed work. There's work in cities, safer work, easier work." She was quiet for a long moment, debating how much to tell him, But there was something about Daniel that invited honesty. He didn't pry or judge, he just listened. My father died owing money to some dangerous men. They came to me for payment. When I couldn't give it, one of them offered to clear the debt if I'd marry him. Daniel's jaw tightened. How old was he? Old enough to have grandchildren. Young enough to want a wife he could control. She resumed her stitching, keeping her hands busy. I couldn't do it, so I took what little I had and ran. The advertisement seemed like fate. Far from Kansas City, honest work, a place to disappear. You think they'll look for you? I think I wasn't worth the trouble once I was gone. The debt wasn't that large. It was about power, not money. She tied off the thread, bit it clean. What about you? Why are you still here working this place alone? You could sell it, start over somewhere easier. Daniel drew on his pipe, exhaling slowly. This land has been in my family for 20 years. My father came here with nothing, built everything from scratch. It wasn't easy for him, being Mexican in a place where people didn't always take kindly to that. But he proved himself, became respected. This ranch is his legacy, he paused, and I love it. The work, the land, the seasons. I love watching things grow, bringing in the harvest. I love the horses, the freedom. I can't imagine doing anything else. Then why did your brother leave? Miguel wanted excitement. Adventure. He wanted to get rich quick instead of building something slow and steady. We fought about it before he left. Daniel's voice went quiet. Haven't heard from him since. Don't know if I will. Delilah heard the hurt beneath his words. I'm sorry. Not your fault. He knocked the ash from his pipe. But that's why I'm grateful you showed up, even if you weren't what I expected. I couldn't have brought in this harvest alone. Would have lost half of it, maybe more. I'm grateful too, Delilah admitted. You could have turned me away, most would have. Most would have been stupid. He stood, stretching. You've proved yourself 10 times over. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start on the south field. As September arrived, the harvest intensified. They worked longer hours, racing against the weather. Delilah had never felt so tired or so alive. Her body had transformed, growing stronger and leaner. Her hands were rough, her skin tanned despite her bonnet. She looked nothing like the city woman who'd arrived a month ago. But something else was changing too, something that had nothing to do with the work. She found herself watching Daniel when he didn't notice. The way he moved, efficient and sure. The way he treated the horses, gentle and patient. The way he'd push his hat back when he was thinking, leaving his hair slightly mussed. The rare smiles that felt like gifts. The sound of his laugh when something genuinely amused him, and she'd catch him watching her too. Their eyes would meet across the field, hold for a moment longer than necessary. When he'd help her lift something heavy, his hands would linger. When they'd sit on the porch in the evenings, the space between them seemed to shrink a little more each night. Neither of them spoke of it. The harvest demanded all their focus. Then came the storm. They'd been watching the clouds build all afternoon, dark and ominous over the mountains. Daniel's face grew increasingly tense as he studied the sky. We need to get the grain in, he said urgently. All of it. If this rain is heavy, it'll ruin what's still in the fields. They worked frantically, hauling sheaves to the barn, stacking them tight. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and electricity. Thunder rumbled in the distance, growing closer. The first drops fell when they were carrying the last load. Within minutes, it became a downpour. They ran for the barn, dragging the final sheaves inside. Daniel slammed the door against the wind. They stood there, dripping and breathing hard, surrounded by the fruits of their labor. Rain hammered on the roof. Lightning flashed through the gaps in the walls, followed by cracks of thunder that seemed to shake the earth. We made it, Delilah gasped, pushing wet hair from her face. Daniel turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. He was soaked, his shirt clinging to him, water dripping from his hair. But it was the intensity in his gaze that froze her in place. "Delilah," he said, and her name in his voice sounded like something precious. "Yes," he crossed to her in 2 strides. "Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm seeing something that isn't there." Her heart hammered. "You're not wrong." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. His palm was warm despite the rain. "I wasn't looking for this, wasn't looking for you. Neither was I," she whispered. "But here you are. Here I am." He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning. She answered by rising on her toes, her hands finding his shoulders, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, became something urgent and hungry, weeks of wanting compressed into this moment. His arms wrapped around her, strong and sure, and she felt safe in a way she couldn't remember feeling since childhood. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "I think I have been since you refused to quit that first day." Joy bloomed in Delilah's chest. "I love you too, since you showed me how to bandage my hands. Maybe before," he laughed, the sound full of wonder. "What are we going to do about this?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm not leaving, not when the harvest ends, not ever if you'll have me. If I'll have you." He pulled back enough to look at her properly. "Delilah, I'll thank God every day if you stay, but I need you to be sure. This life, it's hard, lonely sometimes. The winters are brutal. The work never ends. It's not what you were raised for." "I wasn't raised for any of this," she countered. "But I've never been happier, I've never felt more myself, and I've never loved anyone the way I love you." He kissed her again, slower this time, tender. "Then stay, please stay." "I will." The storm raged outside, but inside the barn, wrapped in each other's arms, they were untouchable. The harvest ended a week later. They'd saved nearly everything, losing only a small portion to the storm. Daniel paid Delilah her wages, a small stack of bills that he pressed into her hands formally. "This is yours," he said. "You earned every cent." Delilah looked at the money, then at him. "What if I wanted to invest it? In what? In this ranch? In our future?" Daniel's eyes searched hers. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering, Delilah crossed to where her carpetbag sat in the corner. She withdrew a small bundle wrapped in cloth and brought it back to him. "My mother's ring. It's the only thing of value I kept. I was going to sell it if I got desperate enough." She unwrapped it, revealing a simple gold band with a small garnet stone. Daniel took it carefully, his large fingers surprisingly delicate. "I'm not desperate anymore," Delilah continued. "I'm exactly where I want to be. So I'm asking you, Daniel Ortega, will you marry me?" A slow smile spread across his face. "That's supposed to be my line." "Then say it." He dropped to one knee right there in the kitchen, still holding her mother's ring. "Delilah Lawrence, you're the most stubborn, strongest, most surprising woman I've ever met. You've brought this place back to life. You've brought me back to life. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting for this moment. They kissed there in the kitchen while the morning sun streamed through the windows, beginning their future. They married a month later in Black Hawk's small church. Rosa came from Denver with her husband and 2 children, delighted to meet the woman who'd captured her brother's heart. Some of the neighboring ranchers attended, people Daniel had known for years, bringing simple gifts and genuine good wishes. The ceremony was brief, the celebration modest, but when Daniel and Delilah exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other through every season, the joy was profound. Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Daniel treated Delilah like something precious, taking his time, making sure she felt cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed they would share for the rest of their lives, talking quietly about their dreams for the ranch, for their life together. "I want to expand the horse breeding," Daniel said, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "There's good money in it, and I've got a good eye for bloodlines." "I want a garden," Delilah said. "A big one, vegetables, herbs, flowers, and maybe some chickens." "Chickens I can do, what else?" She hesitated. "Children, someday, if we're blessed with them." Daniel pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I'd like that too. A whole houseful if you're willing." "Let's start with one and see how we manage," she said, laughing. Winter came early that year. By November, snow blanketed the ranch, transforming it into something pristine and silent. The work changed with the season. They tended the horses, repaired equipment, made improvements to the house and barn. The days were shorter but no less full. Delilah discovered she loved winter's quietness. The forced slowness gave them time together, time to learn each other more deeply. She taught Daniel to read better, sitting with him by the fire in the evenings, patiently working through books she'd brought from Kansas City. He taught her to ride properly, gave her a gentle mare named Honey, and showed her the property in all its winter beauty. They talked endlessly about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their fears, their hopes. Daniel told her about growing up caught between two worlds, Mexican and American, never quite fitting into either. About the prejudice his father had faced, the way he'd had to work twice as hard to earn half the respect. About learning to be proud of his heritage while navigating a world that often wasn't kind to people like him. Delilah shared her own stories. Growing up motherless, trying to keep house for a father who drank too much after his wife's death. The loneliness of being a woman with few options. The terror of those last months in Kansas City, feeling trapped, seeing no way out. "I'm glad you ran," Daniel said one snowy evening, holding her close. "I'm glad you were brave enough to answer that advertisement. I'm glad you didn't quit, even when it was hard." "I'm glad you gave me a chance," Delilah replied. "I'm glad you saw past what you expected to see what was actually there." They made love often that winter, learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure, building an intimacy that went beyond the physical. Delilah had been nervous at first, knowing little about such things, but Daniel was patient and attentive, making it something beautiful rather than frightening. Spring arrived like a promise. The snow melted, revealing the earth beneath. Green shoots pushed through the thawing ground. The horses grew restless, eager to be out in the pastures again. And Delilah realized she'd missed her monthly courses twice. She waited another month to be certain, then told Daniel one April evening as they stood watching the sunset. "I think I'm with child," she said softly. Daniel went very still beside her. Then he turned, his face a mixture of wonder and joy and something like fear. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I'll see the doctor in town to confirm, but yes, I think so." He swept her up, spinning her around, laughing with pure delight. When he set her down, he immediately looked worried. "I shouldn't have done that. Are you all right? Is the baby all right?" Delilah laughed. "We're fine. Both of us are fine." He knelt down, placing his hands gently on her stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I'm your father." "I can't wait to meet you." Tears sprang to Delilah's eyes. "You're going to be such a good father." "I'm going to try," he said, standing and pulling her close. "God, Delilah, I'm so happy it scares me." "Me too," she whispered against his chest. "Me too." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Delilah continued working as long as she could, adapting her tasks as her body changed. Daniel became almost comically protective, constantly worrying that she was doing too much, lifting too much, working too hard. "I'm pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him regularly. I know, but let me worry. It's what fathers do." Rosa came to stay for the last month, arriving in a flurry of supplies and advice and boundless energy. She and Delilah became fast friends, staying up late talking while Rosa shared stories of her own children, tips for managing labor, and the comfortable wisdom of a woman who'd been through it before. "My brother is happier than I've ever seen him," Rosa said one night as they sat shelling peas. "You're good for him, Delilah. You remind him that there's more to life than work." "He's good for me too," Delilah said. "He gave me a home when I had none, purpose when I felt lost, love when I didn't think I'd ever find it. You saved each other, I think." Delilah considered that. "Maybe we did." The baby came on a warm June night in 1880. Labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Daniel paced the house like a caged animal while Rosa attended Delilah, her capable hands and calm voice a lifeline through the pain. "You're doing wonderfully," Rosa kept saying. "Just a little more. You're so strong." Finally, as dawn broke, the baby arrived with a lusty cry that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Rosa cleaned and wrapped the infant, then placed the tiny bundle in Delilah's arms. "A boy," she announced, smiling. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Delilah stared down at the small face, the tiny fingers that gripped her thumb with surprising strength, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. He had Daniel's dark hair and eyes, and she was already completely in love. Rosa fetched Daniel, who entered the room looking terrified and hopeful in equal measure. When he saw Delilah holding their son, his face crumpled with emotion. "Come meet your son," Delilah said softly. Daniel approached slowly, as though afraid he might break the spell. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking at the baby with absolute wonder. "He's perfect," Daniel whispered. "He's absolutely perfect." "Would you like to hold him?" Daniel nodded, unable to speak. Delilah carefully transferred the baby to his father's arms, and Daniel cradled him close, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, son," he said. "I'm your papa. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anything." They named him Diego after Daniel's father. Diego Ortega grew quickly, a healthy, happy baby who filled the house with his presence. Delilah took to motherhood with the same determination she'd brought to the harvest, learning as she went, adapting to the new demands on her time and body. Daniel was a devoted father, rising in the night to bring Diego to Delilah for feeding, changing diapers without complaint, spending every spare moment simply watching his son in wonder. The ranch work continued, but they managed it together, taking turns so one could always be with Diego. The seasons cycled onward. Diego's first steps came in spring, his first words in summer. He grew into a toddler, then a little boy, curious and energetic, following Daniel everywhere, trying to help with the horses, asking endless questions. 2 years after Diego, Delilah gave birth to a daughter they named Daniela, after her father. She had Delilah's auburn hair and green eyes, and a sweet temperament that balanced her brother's wildness. Another 2 years brought another son, Marcus, who was quiet and thoughtful from the start. The ranch prospered. Daniel's horse breeding program proved successful, and they gained a reputation for quality stock. Delilah's garden flourished, providing food for the table and extra to sell in town. They hired 2 ranch hands, good men who worked hard and became part of their extended family. Life wasn't always easy. There were hard winters that tested them, dry summers that worried them, illnesses that frightened them. Diego broke his arm falling from a fence when he was 7, and Delilah felt her heart stop until the doctor assured them he'd be fine. Daniela went through a period of terrible nightmares that had her climbing into their bed nearly every night. Marcus struggled with reading until they found a teacher in town who had the patience to help him. But through it all, Daniel and Delilah faced everything together. Their love, forged in that first harvest season, only deepened with time. They still sat on the porch in the evenings when they could, watching their children play, holding hands, grateful for the life they'd built. "You ever miss Kansas City?" Daniel asked one evening when the children were grown, all three of them teenagers now, strong and capable, helping run the ranch that would one day be theirs. Delilah considered the question seriously. "I miss some things. The culture, the theater, the libraries. But no, I don't miss the life I had there. This is home. You are home, our children, this land, this life we've made. I've never regretted coming here. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard," she said firmly. "The hard things make the good things sweeter." "And Daniel, there are so many good things." He lifted her hand, kissing her weathered knuckles. The ring she wore, her mother's ring that had become her wedding ring, had worn smooth over the years. "I love you, Delilah Ortega, more every day somehow. I love you too, always." Diego, their eldest, married at 23, bringing a kind, hard-working woman named Sarah to the ranch. They built a house on the property, staying close, Diego taking on more responsibility for the horses. A year later, they gave Daniel and Delilah their first grandchild, a boy named after Daniel. Daniela showed no interest in marrying young. She wanted to travel first, to see something of the world beyond Colorado. Daniel and Delilah gave her their blessing and enough money to be safe, and she spent 2 years exploring before returning home with stories and a broader perspective, ready to settle down. She eventually married a teacher from Denver, a gentle man who loved books as much as she did. Marcus turned out to have a gift for training horses that exceeded even Daniel's. He took over that part of the business, developing new techniques, earning a reputation that brought buyers from across the territory. As Daniel and Delilah moved into their 50s, they gradually stepped back from the daily work, letting their children run things more and more. They'd earned the rest, and they took it gratefully, spending their days in each other's company, watching grandchildren play where their own children had once played. "We've built something good here," Daniel said one evening. They were 60 now, silver threading through their hair, lines mapping their faces, but still healthy, still together, still in love. "We have," Delilah agreed. "Something that will last." She thought back to that day in 1879, when she'd arrived with nothing but a carpetbag and desperation, answering an advertisement for work she had no idea how to do. She thought about how scared she'd been, how uncertain, how she'd almost turned back a dozen times on that long walk from town. If she had, she would have missed everything. This life, this love, this family. All of it hinged on that one moment of courage, that decision to keep walking toward an unknown future. "Thank you," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, puzzled. "For what?" "For giving me a chance. For seeing past what I appeared to be and seeing what I could become. For loving me." "Delilah, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You came here to help with one harvest, and you stayed for all of them. Every season, every year. You made this house a home. You gave me a family. You gave me purpose beyond just work. Everything good in my life comes from you." She leaned against him, his arm coming around her naturally, automatically, the way it had thousands of times before. "We saved each other," she said, echoing Rosa's words from so long ago. "We did," he agreed. "We really did." The sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and violet. The ranch stretched out around them, thriving and beautiful, a testament to their years of labor and love. Their children's laughter drifted from the main house where the family had gathered for Sunday dinner. The horses nickered softly in the pastures. The wheat fields, planted and harvested and planted again countless times, waited for another season. And Daniel and Delilah sat together on the porch where they'd first admitted their love, where they'd shared countless evenings, where they'd watched their children grow and their dreams come true. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, hearts at peace, knowing that whatever seasons remained to them, they would face them together. The advertisement had asked for help with a harvest. Delilah had come and stayed through every season after that, and in doing so, they had both harvested more than wheat. They had harvested a life rich with love, purpose, family, and joy. They had built something that would endure long after they were gone, a legacy carved not just from the land but from the choice to see each other truly, to love each other wholly, and to face every challenge side by side. As darkness fell and the stars emerged one by one in the vast Colorado sky, they sat together, grateful for every moment, every season, every harvest. Their story had begun with an advertisement and a desperate gamble, but it had become something far greater. A love story written across the years, permanent as the mountains, enduring as the land itself, a testament to what could grow when two people chose each other and refused to let go. And in the morning, they would wake together as they had for decades, greet the new day side by side, and continue living the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life they had built together, one season at a time.